Hello and welcome back to Super Wall Jump, a video games podcast where I talk to content creators and game developers and everything in between. Um, I'm your host, Lawson Newland, and I'm sick. And with me today, I have
Blazeingphoenix. I am a speedrunner, both visually and recently a blindfolded speedrunner as well. And I typically stream on Twitch and YouTube, both using the same username, Blazeingphoenix. That's BLAZEINGPHOENIX. E was just because Kid Me didn't know how to spell, but I've kept it just because no one else takes it.
I completely understand. So what is a speed run for the people at home who don't know what that is?
Typically, a speedrun is where you start a new game and try to complete the game as fast as possible with some miscellaneous categories here and there, but that's generally the gist is load up the game, beat it as fast as possible with in-game coding content, and then finishing it, whether it's like finishing the boss or completing a level of a puzzle, etc., without the use of outside sources like Game Genie, Game Sharks, and things like that.
Makes sense. You mentioned multiple categories. What kind of categories does that entail? Is it because I know that you do blindfolded speedruns? Are there other categories?
There are some simple other categories such as beating the game as fast as possible or beating it while collecting everything that the game includes, which is a 100% category. There's low percent where people tries to beat the game with as little as items as you can collect as possible. There are some miscellaneous stuff like let's say Cave Story, a game for instance. There's a bad ending where you just talk to someone and they take you away from the island and you beat the game quote unquote with credits, but it's not the good ending. There are some other categories where people will just try to beat a certain part of the game as fast as possible, whether it's the beginning of the game or get to this secret boss and beat this secret boss as fast as possible. It's just whatever people feel like speedrunning, I guess.
So there's a lot of different varieties and ways to play the game, even if you're just speedrunning.
Correct. You can also do like Mario 64 runners. They can do 16-star speed run. They can do a 70-star. They can do a 120-star, which would be its equivalent of a 100%. You can also do different difficulties. So some games have easy, normal, hard, expert. So there's different categories for those. There's some games that have multiple characters like Resident Evil, beat Chris as fast as possible, or beat Jill, or beat Leon, Claire, things like that.
How did you get started doing speedruns?
Uh, I had beaten Zelda 1 for the very first time back in either 2010 or 2011, and I did get stuck, and I used a website called zeldadungeon.net or zeldadungeon.com. And while I used their guide to help me beat the game, I realized that after I had beaten the game and I went back to the beginning to see what their intro section was, that you could just gather a lot of resources way before the very first dungeon. So I was curious of how overpowered Link could be at the start, and so I played around with that, and then I realized you can get a sword upgrade, armor upgrade, 3 hearts, and most of the items before the very first dungeon very quickly, and so then I was curious how fast can I do that? And then I think it was like 2.5 hours my first run, and then I realized that was kind of fun to do. I kind of want to do it again to beat my time until eventually with the internet I realized other people were doing their games as fast as possible, whether it's any percent or collect everything in the game and then beat it. And it just snowballed from there where after a while I would play a game casually, I would have fun with it, and then I would be like, okay, I've already done everything else. Let's see how fast I can beat it if it seems like a fun game to do fast. Because there are some games I just enjoy casually, like especially like Final Fantasy games, whereas other games I enjoyed it casually, but I also saw I could probably beat this fast and want to do it fast. Like Zelda's and Kirby, Kingdom Hearts and all that.
Yeah, you can't really speed run Animal Crossing.
Mhm.
That's it's kind of a time gated game.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So why do it blindfolded? I gotta imagine for games which are a visual medium, being able to see is kind of like the thing, right?
Oh, are especially helpful, more helpful than probably anything else besides hands or feet to play the game. Back in 2015, I was deep into speedrunning Kingdom Hearts. While I typically didn't run 3 hour long games back then, uh, Kingdom Hearts had just released on the PS3 in late 2014 that allowed cutscene skips, so it made it far faster than the PS2 version. And while I was a part of the Kingdom Hearts community, which is what made it so fun for me to speedrun, was it was the first time I engaged in a community and had fun strat sharing with each other and competing against each other. Awesome Games Done Quick, which is a huge speedrunning marathon event to raise money for either prevent cancer or Doctors Without Borders. There's a runner who did the Child Dungeons of Ocarina of Time blindfolded by the name of a runner guy, 2489, I think is his username. I probably got the numbers wrong. I'm sorry. But he did Ocarina of Time, the first 3 dungeons blindfolded. And us in the community was like, how did someone just do a 3D action game blindfolded? And so a lot of them dipped their toes in seeing how far they can get with this game that they had speedrun dozens of times. And most of them spent the first 2 hours in the tutorial section because that's not something that you really do without seeing. And so what I did is I routed the first tutorial section in the first half of the first world until it got to what I thought was going to be luck based of getting past the second half of the island. I'm like, if I'm stuck in the beginning, there's no way I'm doing the rest of this game blindfolded. Until years later, a man by the name of Bubzia, who I would consider the world's greatest blindfolded speedrunner, actually beat Kingdom Hearts blindfolded. And then when I watched his run, it looked rough. Like, it's still impressive that he beat the game blindfolded, but there were some parts where he would spend 10 plus minutes just to get out of a single room because of a single mistake. And so I wasn't convinced to try speedrunning blindfolded then until years later, a YouTuber by the name of Summoning Salt released a Super Mario blindfolded world record progression video. And I saw, sure enough, Bubsy is in the video, first beating SM64 in 3 hours. And then as the years went on and he got better and better at the game, as well as other runners, they dropped it from 3 hours to 30 minutes to 25 minutes and was working on sub 20. And I could see in that video Bubsy is struggling in parts for the 3 hour run. And then by the time he got the practice, he was just flying through the game almost as good as a visual. And there was always that part of me that always wanted to go back to Kingdom Hearts and finish what I started for blindfolded. And so when I saw that all it takes is just more and more practice and knowledge of the game, you could cut a long blindfolded run into a far shorter run. And since no one else was doing Kingdom Hearts blindfolded, to take Bubsy's 8 hour long run shorter, I thought it would be a fun side project for me to work on to potentially cut that world record down. And as I was playing Kingdom Hearts blindfolded, I was shocked at how both difficult it was that I imagined, but also easier than I imagined it to be. Especially with the knowledge I had on the game, it was shockingly, as the more I did it, the easier it got, to where I'm like, okay, this is actually not as hard as it looked. And so then I tried that with other games, and it's still difficult, but it's like a new way of playing a game, sort of like an extra difficulty mode, and you just got to figure out the puzzle or figure out the mechanics of how can I get from point A to point B blindfolded. And it just became super fun after a while of trying different games like Nintendo World Championships, Tekken, A Link to the Past, and other games blindfolded.
I have to imagine it's really hard also because, well, Kingdom Hearts is a 3D action game, but also there's platforming, and also, most terribly, I imagine, is there is a lock-on mechanic for attacks. And if you lock onto an enemy and then they go around you, suddenly you're facing the wrong way, but you don't know because you're blindfolded.
Mm-hmm.
So you can clear a room and then be like, all right, cool, time to go forward. And then you just walk into a wall for 15 minutes.
That was definitely a worry I had. Luckily, you don't need to fight everything you encounter. And while there's a couple instances where you do need to fight, and that could be a problem. The first instance of that, you can actually go into your options and turn auto lock off. And what that
Oh.
will do is Sora, the main character, will just swing in the direction you have him, but it won't turn the camera when he does that. And so I use that to take care of the first mobs where it's forced that that's the case. And then later in the run, I do have to fight a shark underwater. Um, and that
Oh
does
God, I forgot about the Little Mermaid level
Mhm.
where you have to be moving in 3 dimensions the whole game. Like the
Yes.
whole time. That's like an hour minimum of I'm underwater. I can go up and down
Mhm.
and all around me. Oh my God, that sounds terrible.
Yes, and then that does create the instance because the shark also has a dash attack. And so when you're locked on and he does a dash attack through the main character, it does turn the camera. But the advantage of that particular room, and it's more like an ellipse.
Mm,
And so luckily, once the fight is over, I can swim to the bottom and I just like go in a slow circle until I reach
mm,
the door that I need. And then most every other instance where you need to do a fight, the game is so generous unintentionally for blindfolded runs
mm,
to where say for in Tarzan's world, you have to fight monkeys to save gorillas. You kill the monkey bad guys, the power wilds as they're called.
mm,
And when you clear that room, it actually cuts to a miniature cutscene where the main character Sora talks to a gorilla. It gives you a reward, but it's consistent where it places you as well as the camera angle. And so you
mm.
clear out the room. It doesn't matter where you are in the room because it will just warp you back to that key cutscene spot to continue that world. And so there's a lot of instances where you fight mobs, it triggers a cutscene, it puts you in the exact same spot immediately after, and so you don't have to worry about finding out where you are.
And that's good. That's gonna be very consistent. But also, I gotta imagine there are some things in the game that you just can't do. I'm thinking personally of a lot of the Coliseum stuff. Um, well, a lot of that is just mash the attack button,
Hmm.
but I'm thinking in particular of like the you have to destroy all the barrels in order to unlock that stuff. Are you able to figure that out, or do you just have that mapped out in your head? Like how much of prepping for a blindfolded run is just playing a level a dozen times with your eyes open?
So I'll answer this in multi parts because you brought up multiple things. I grew up with Kingdom Hearts. Uh, it was a game that my folks played, as well as being a kid who did grow up with Disney movies, and
Mm-hmm.
with a family who was just getting into Final Fantasy. Here's this game that's 3D action, which I like, with Disney characters I recognize and Final Fantasy characters I recognize. So I grew up playing it a lot, and I had friends who played it. I had family who played it. And so when it comes to memorizing quote unquote maps and locations, I already have a general idea of what each room looks like just
Mm-hmm.
from casually playing it often. And then it's just the means of memorizing steps of how to get through it. It's like when I exit the tent in Deep Jungle, the Tarzan world, I
Mm-hmm.
know if I want to go to the next location, I center the camera first just to make sure it's not janky. And then I will dodge roll to the left twice. I'll dodge roll forward 5 times, and then I just hold up left. And I know that's will get me to the next room I need to get to, and then so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. So if there's a mistake, I have a general idea of where I am and have a good idea of what the location looks like. It's just to be optimal and to not spend 5 minutes running into a wall. I do memorize those steps of dodge rolls or listening for Sora's footsteps or swing my keyblade 3 times in a direction to
Mm-hmm.
take micro steps, as I would call them. For the Colosseum, it's funny. I'm sure the barrels won't be as big of an issue as I would imagine, but Kingdom Hearts, you necessarily don't need to beat every world in the game to beat the game.
This is true.
So Olympus, Colosseum, the Hercules world, you can actually skip. 100 Acre Woods, you never need to touch. And before Neverland, you only need to clear 2 of the 3 worlds, being Monstro, Atlantica, or Halloween Town. As
Mm-hmm.
long as you clear 2 out of those 3 worlds, you have a high chance of encountering Hook Ship, the Neverland world, when flying
Mm-hmm.
the gummy ship missions. And so visual speedruns, they do Monstro and Halloween Town because Halloween Town is actually shorter than Atlantica. It gives you more experience. It gives you a better Keyblade at the end, and gives you a very useful spell. The issue with that Blindfolded is Halloween Town has luck spots, as I call them. So it's not impossible, but not speedrun friendly. Whereas Atlantica, while it's longer, you get a worse Keyblade, you don't get as useful as a spell, and like you said, it becomes a XY axis running to XYZ. Third dimension more for a platforming game is a little more tricky, but there's no real luck spots other than the first Ursula fight, which isn't really that bad of a thing. So I choose to do Atlantica over Halloween Town. What makes Halloween Town not speedrun friendly is after a certain point, you have to talk to the mayor, and then there are 7 tombstones next to him. And to unlock the next treasure chest, there's a ghost that appears from a tombstone, and it's random, and there's 3 ghosts that do that. So you have 7 tombs with 3 random ghosts, which if you do the math, 7 to the power 3 is a 1 in 343 chance of getting that right.
Yeah, which is going to be a bit of a problem, I think.
And then immediately after, you have to climb a giant mess of a tower, the Oogie's Manor, to get to Lock, Shock, and Barrel, to then go all the way to the bottom of it to fight Oogie, who then has his...
Oogie Boogie fight is very RNG dependent, like aggressively. Okay, wait, do I have my voice again? I kind of do. Oh my god. Yes.
Yes, it's very luck because you first have to fight 2 Heartless, and then you gotta... After you clear that wave, he has 5 buttons that glow. And what those buttons indicate are sections of his roulette wheel that if you press the button, it will lock those 3 sections. And if Oogie's not in that section, it immediately goes to the next phase where he throws 3 dice and it's random what would happen. You got to get past that obstacle for those 5 buttons to glow again. And if you do happen to pick the button of one of those 3 sections Oogie's trapped in, you're only allowed 10 hits on him. But that also includes Donald and Goofy, your party members. So if they hit him instead of you, they're taking away your superior damage. And then the worst of it all. So you already have a 1 in 5 chance of getting the correct button if you find a button while blindfolded, because the wheel's spinning throughout the fight.
Yeah.
You only get an opportunity of 10 hits. And if the fight goes on long enough, Oogie actually can heal himself with one of his dice rolls. If he lands on his healing machine one, he'll heal himself, and you have no good way of damaging him in between his the pressing of the buttons, and so you have a 1 in 5 chance each time, while also a chance for him to heal himself. And then should you get past that fight, you now have to climb his giant mess of a tower again with 5 glowing or dark orbs that you have to beat. And the more orbs you beat, the harder the fight gets, because then more Heartless spawn, the tower's throwing more fire at you, and if you fall at any point during the climb, it's pretty much you're not getting back up.
Way back up. And again, you are blindfolded, and it's not exactly a linear tower. So I would say an advantage of doing Kingdom Hearts in general is that it is a lot of combat rooms, right?
Yes, there's a lot of rooms that you have to get through, some where it's a weird room to try to maneuver through, some where you have to avoid the enemies that are trying to hit you while you're going through it, and then a lot of rooms are actually just easy, thankfully. But it is those rooms that with platforming that can be weird, and rooms where Heartless really like to attack you while you're trying to get through it.
But the big thing again with the fact that it's rooms, it means that you don't have to navigate in a completely open world. When you go to a new room, you're going to be starting in the same location every time. So it doesn't make it easy, but it makes it easier.
Oh, definitely. And especially because Sora thankfully looks the same direction every single time he goes from room to room. There are a few instances where the camera is your friend and it won't mess up when you go through rooms, but there are other rooms that even if you have the camera the same way when you go through it, it wants to just flip or look differently. So then I have to memorize which rooms are the camera friendly, which room is it not. If I can't remember, then just safety mash R3 to center the camera and then go from there. But the fact that it is in chunks like that does make it a lot easier. And blindfold friendly compared to, say, Breath of the Wild or even Kingdom Hearts 3, where it's much
Mhm.
larger maps.
Yes. When I say, listener, that it's room based, you go to worlds, and these worlds are broken up into rooms. They may not look like rooms, but they essentially are. And basically, they're smaller levels that you go through to get to the next smaller sub level. And that does make it easier, as we just
Mhm.
discussed. But I realized when I said, "Oh, it's room based," that you might think, "Oh, wait, it's Animal Crossing now." It's not Animal Crossing. That's just how the levels are designed. Um,
The best way I like to look at it is, say, like the older Zeldas, like Link's Awakening or Oracle of Seasons. You go through
mhm.
a rectangle of a room for the overworld, but then it just scrolls to the next room and scrolls to the next room, and so it's more in like chunks than here's this massive world you got to remember, like a Link to the Past or um
Mhm.
Majora's. I guess Minish Cap is kind of like that, but they have longer rooms. But I know the Oracle games and Link's Awakening is more rectangle for every single room that you progress through on the overworld and in dungeons.
Makes sense. It also, another example of a room based game is Celeste,
Yes.
another game that you have done blindfolded speedruns of. I did my research, um, because again, you start in the same place every time, and from there, it's just a matter of, okay, cool, I know where I am, and I have to hope that I remember the order of operations to get where I want to go.
Celeste was
However,
I'm
oh,
sorry, go
continue.
on.
Oh, well, Celeste, I've played, and it's ridiculously hard. So props to you for saying, ah, yes, this really hard game. I want to do it blindfolded.
Yeah. While being a part of the blindfolded community, I would watch some of the runners from the Celeste community play it,
Mhm.
specifically Malik Bell, who has the second fastest time in the game. And to me, it was a game that I tried like the first half of, but side scroller platformers aren't my strong suit. I don't think they're bad games. They just after an hour, to me, they tend to get a little stale. But when I watch him do Celeste Blindfold, I'm like, that kind of looks fun, especially with the speed tech that they incorporate in it. And I
Mhm.
only did the first two chapters of the game, but I also wanted to try first what it's like to play it blindfolded, and then try to get as fast as I can without being exceptionally well at the game. So I at least got a top 10
Mhm.
time for chapter 1 and chapter 2. And it was super fun because the speed tech side of things while blindfolded created an extra challenge that I'm not as used to, because for Kingdom Hearts, uh like I said before, roll left 2 times, roll forward 5 times. There's not much faster I can do with that movement.
Yeah.
Whereas Celeste, you have all these options, but the better options are harder. So you trade consistency for speed until you can get consistent at those speed. Uh, but for Celeste, it was also cool because, like you said as well, it's room based, but each room that you get to acts as a checkpoint. So if you die in that room, you just start right in the same location of that room and just try again. And so that created it to be easier to learn than, say, Kingdom Hearts, where it's easier for movement. But if I make a single mistake, my checkpoint is whatever the last save point I saved on. So I either brute force my way in the room that I'm stuck in and hope, or I have to go back to the last save point I saved at, which could have been 2 minutes or even 6 minutes ago, and that will lose a
A
large
lot
chunk
of
of
time.
time. And so Celeste was nice in the fact that, oh, I messed up this room, I just hit retry or I die, and now I'm back at the start and just try
Yeah.
again.
Having played Celeste and beaten it mostly without the assist mode, um, the last level I needed to turn on like infinite jumps because it was too hard. But I love how fast you respawn in Celeste.
Mhm.
It makes it so much better as a platformer. Oh yeah, you failed. Don't worry, you're back up in the next second.
Mhm.
You're
And
good.
I think while I didn't know this per se, I think when you die, you can actually like, hit A or B, and it will respawn you even faster by like half a
Mhm.
second. Which for me, whenever I die, I'm taking that extra half second to think, what did I mess up and how do I fix it? Whereas some of the more advanced Celeste blindfolded speedrunners already know exactly how they messed up and can go. They're so fast at it. Like I feel good about my top 10 placements for chapter 1 and chapter 2, but my times are still 3 times as long as like the top 3 runners. Just cuz their runs look just as good as visual and mine looks like a good speedrunner but not great.
Yeah. But hey, again, you're doing it blindfolded,
Mhm.
and I imagine that your day job is not being a speedrunner.
No, no. I'm not gonna say specifically what it is, but it's very physical and nothing to do with video games whatsoever.
Yeah, so give yourself a bit of a pat on the back for getting top 10 in a blindfolded
Mhm.
speedrun. But going back to Kingdom Hearts, how do you manage the inventory stuff? Because if you're blindfolded, I imagine that extends to stuff in the menus as well. Um, and hey, you have like weapons and equipment that you need to figure out, and also like giving commands to Donald and Goofy of Disney fame. Um, how do you handle that, or do you just pray?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that is an aspect of the game that people overlook when they first think about the game blindfolded,
Mhm.
but is one that, as someone who did speedrun the game years ago, I knew that that will be an issue. It's not necessarily hard per se, but the part that makes it scary is if I mess
Mhm.
up in the menu, unless specific things are messed up, I'm not gonna know I messed up in the menu until it's too late. So if I equip the wrong weapon, each
Mhm.
weapon actually has its own different sound effect. So when I hit and I still hear,
Oh,
if I hear one noise, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I did wrong there. Whereas other things like equipping items, I won't know I messed up until I throw an item and didn't get what I was expecting to get.
that's
But
fair.
that's one of those where I do have to do a little bit more memorization of placements. Luckily, most items, accessories, and abilities are in order that you unlock them. So if I have a
Mhm.
general sense of when I unlock those things, I have an idea of, okay, dodge roll is number 1 or number 2 on the list, and then later I unlock this ability, which is number 8. But since I just unlocked it, it's actually at the bottom on my list, so I don't even
Mhm.
need to remember 8th. I just remember bottom, equip it. Go to Donald, go to bottom, equip it. In It's items and spells that are the trickiest to keep up with, but again, those are mostly just memorization, and if something goes wrong, trying to keep an ear out for what went wrong, or just hoping that eventually I can get through wherever I'm at, even if it takes an extra minute or two. But I
Yeah.
also have a list on a Google Docs because I make Google Docs of a lot of things. And
Mhm.
the one advantage of being at a job that I work at is I can have like my phone setting to the side, and while I'm working, I can just look at it and just run through it like I'm studying for a test over and over until I just have it well memorized. So while I'm not playing the game blindfolded, it's one of those exercises I can do to practice for blindfolded
Mhm.
in those 8 hours that I'm working my full-time job. So then when I go back to playing games blindfolded, I've already skipped that practice and just need to practice everything else that I need to that I can't at work, which is how I
Makes
prepared
sense.
for most of my blindfolded games, is running it through my head over and over and
Mhm.
over at work. And then when I go home, that's probably why from stream to stream, it just looks like I've improved greatly
Mhm.
while not doing a lot of practice. It's not that I'm cheating or that I'm just naturally gifted. I just spent the last 8 hours at work just thinking it over,
Mhm.
and it translates into my next gameplay, and it helps significantly for me.
So you mentioned you were doing streaming with this. How does that work? Because responding to chat and stuff is very much a, all right, cool. I need to look at my other screen and read what everyone's saying.
Mhm. It definitely creates a disconnect for most games. Something like Celeste, because of chapter 1 and chapter 2 being relatively short, especially the better I got, the
Mhm.
shorter they got, it wasn't that big of gaps. I'm sure whenever I finally do full run attempts of Kingdom Hearts, not chatting to chat for 4 hours will create this awkward
Mhm.
disconnect. Especially when I did Nintendo World Championships, 78 and 100 levels. Those were 20 to 30-minute long runs. But the as negative as it may sound, the advantage for me is I don't get a lot of viewers anyways. So
Mhm.
there's not a lot of instances where I'm not talking to anyone. So that helps a little bit. And I'm hoping if I do get bigger at some point, I could like find mods who could talk with chat if people have questions of how
Mhm.
did this happen or what is their plans,
And
things like that.
also, at a certain point, a chat becomes self-sustaining. Everyone's talking to
Hmm.
each other, um, and that just helps all of it.
And I know for Malik Bell, again, the second fastest runner for Celeste, he had it set up to where in between chapters, because the speedrunning community goes off of in-game timer, and the in-game timer only runs while you're playing through the chapters, not in between chapters, and then it has a final time at the end. What he
Mhm.
did is in between chapters, he would sit there for a couple minutes and keep the blindfold on, but had text to speech. So then someone could do exclamation mark TTS and then type something and then read it to him and he could respond. And he'd spend 2 to 3 minutes talking and then would go back to the next chapter, have text to speech turned off. And then when he finished the chapter,
Mhm.
turned it back on and talked to chat that way. So he never removed the blindfold, but he could still interact with chat.
Yeah, I that is what I was thinking in terms of having a blindfolded speed run on stream is you do have text to speech so that way you can hear, oh hey, Gregorio the Fifth
Hmm.
has cheered 16 bits. You can be like, oh thank you Gregorio. Okay, I can't say I should not say Gregorio with my voice being like this. Um,
But
but
for me, I like lock in super hard, and so I would not be able to listen to whatever chat's saying anyways, because I'm constantly listening for specific audio cues, which is the number one thing that's used for blindfolded speedruns. Either I listen if I walk in a room, I listen if I hit this enemy, I listen if I grab this item. I just constantly just listening, almost like a blind person without being able to touch the wall. I just have to hear, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. I know where I am. Let's move on to the next series of steps to get to the next sound that I'm listening for.
yeah, I checked out one of your videos,
Mhm.
and I saw, for example, during Destiny Island, you were mashing the attack button while
Mhm.
on a ladder, and I imagine that helps you confirm, oh yes, I'm still on the ladder.
Yes, that helps a lot. That was something I never used casually. I
Mhm.
don't remember when I figured out I could do that. I just know climbing trees, climbing ladders, holding onto a ledge, I was using the attack button X, but I was always afraid if I wasn't grabbed onto one of those things, I would awkwardly swing, which would
Mhm.
lose me time and might mess up my movement. I later learned that when Sora cannot use the attack command, if you press right on the D-pad, it will make that
Mhm.
error noise without you swinging the keyblade. And so whenever Sora can't attack, that's holding onto an edge, swimming, climbing a ladder, or climbing a vine, or even standing next to an NPC. The game doesn't want you just to swing at them. As funny as that is, I will
Mhm.
mash right on the D-pad so it doesn't use my attack. But then as soon as it goes off, I know I'm exactly where I should be. I've grabbed onto this ledge, so I mash it until I hear it 4 times. Because the nice thing about grabbing onto a ledge or climbing a ladder or vines is the camera will center itself as you're holding onto those objects. So I'll not only use that to continue my platforming, but also use it to auto adjust the camera for me. Because with a 360 camera, you don't want to try to do that yourself while
Oh
blindfolded.
God, no.
So anything I can use to help turn the camera to the next area that I'm going for, while also having an audio cue confirming that I am where I want to be. It's just a dual usefulness that, again, the game developers unintentionally added that helps for blindfolded speedruns.
Mhm.
And
Hey.
I do want to apologize for anyone who watches the runs because you'll hear that error noise a lot and you'll hear a chirp noise, which is me pressing left on the D-pad because that will always make a noise if I'm in control of Sora. So I use that to know when I go through a loading zone because it will stop. I will hear it again when I'm back in control of Sora. I will use it until a cutscene starts because then it will stop. And when I cutscene skip and I'm mashing left, as soon as I hear that chirp noise again, I'm in control of Sora. And so it's a very annoying noise, but it tells me a lot of what's going on immediately.
Mhm. It turns out good sound design is, in fact, a part of making a good game.
Hmm. Definitely. Ocarina of Time, that's how. Runner Guy was able to do that game is it has an incredible uh,
Mhm.
uh, variety of sounds for a Nintendo 64 game. Celeste has a lot of sounds for an indie game. Like,
Mhm.
for instance, Ocarina of Time, when you're running from dirt to wood platform to metal platform, they all have a different sound. When Link runs into a wall, he slows down, so his running pace goes from normal to
Mhm.
slowed down, and you can hear those footsteps. Hitting a wall, a wood wall makes a different noise than a metal wall, than a stone wall, and Celeste has something similar. If I run on metal, I'll hear it. If I run on snow, I'll hear it. If I run on a normal platform, I'll hear it. Climbing walls can have different noises. Just latching onto a wall will have different noise, and so having as many noises to give you as much information without seeing is super useful for games that were not designed for blindfolded speedruns.
Mhm. So, what's next for you after you've done Kingdom Hearts?
Uh, it's either I can go back to Celeste and finish what I started, even though that will be much harder because I just dipped my toes in the two easiest levels of the game.
Mhm.
Or I've thought about for fun seeing if Chain of Memories, the Riku story, was doable. As luck based as that game is, I thought that would be fun because that used to be one of my favorite games to speedrun as well, was the Riku side. Or another luck based game that will not probably be speedrun friendly that looks interesting to me is a Cadence of Hyrule, which is a Zelda spinoff that was kind of rhythm based, and it's a rogue light game. So
It's Crypt
maps,
of the Necrodancer,
yes,
but Zelda. And if you
yes.
haven't played Crypt of the Necrodancer or Cadence of Hyrule, I'd recommend it. They're both pretty cheap and they're pretty fun. And then you'll realize very quickly, oh, I'm actually not great at this.
I never played the original, but I heard the soundtrack to Crypt of the Necrodancer, Cadence of Hyrule, and as a
Mhm.
big Zelda fan, I really liked the remixes that they had. And I also like rhythm games, and while it's not necessarily a rhythm game like Guitar Hero, Osu, or Dance Dance Revolution, it still had uh, inputs needing to be in rhythm of the song that's playing. So I thought it looked interesting, and when I played Cadence of Hyrule, I had a blast. I thought it was one of the most fun games I ever played, and something I didn't expect to have as much fun as I did. And
Mhm.
I did dabble in speedrunning it a little bit without recording, so I don't have any official footage, but I did do some fun 80% speedruns, and someone has actually beaten it with a random seed blindfolded. It took them a few hours to do it, but the fact that it is doable and it's luck based, so it's one of those games that you have to figure out what you're doing mid run and still try to complete it sounds more interesting to me than I have 100 steps of sequences that I want to do, and I'm just going to try to execute it and hope for the best. To me, that's still impressive to do blindfolded, especially when there's some luck elements here or there. But I know that some people go yawn. They're just memorizing steps and just beating it that way. Whereas
Mhm.
Cadence of Hyrule, I'm figuring things out mid run. I think Hyrule Castle is always in the middle, but things like Gerudo Valley, Lost Woods, Kakariko Village, and Death Mountain are moved around every single play,
Mhm.
as well as there are maps that are swapped out. So you might have this Lost Woods map layout, or the next game you play, the layout would be this way, or this layout would be this way.
There are
Oh,
variants for each map,
yes.
basically. So, hey, cool, this tree might be in a different place this time. So you can't just rely on,
Hmm.
all right, cool, five up,
Hmm.
five right, five up. Oh, if you go five right, there may be a tree before you can go up now.
Hmm.
So you have to, you know,
I think
adjust.
Hyrule Castle, Kakariko Village itself, Gerudo Valley itself, one or two Lost Woods room, and the main Death Mountain room, I think, are always the same for layouts. I don't know about enemy spawns, but everything else is random. So this heart piece might be, let's say we're looking at a grid A2, but now in this next gameplay, your heart piece is at H4, and this enemy, which spawns in this room, might not spawn in this room again this next playthrough. And to me, figuring things out while blindfolded with some levels of consistency of, like, if I reach Hyrule Castle, I know how to get through it. If I reach Kakariko Village, I know where this house, this house, this house is, but 90% of the game is still random. And the dungeons, I'm pretty sure, have different layouts every time as well. It's 2 floors per dungeon and a consistent boss, but you still have to figure out how to get through those floors without dying. And it sounds difficult, but a part of me thinks that sounds more interesting and fun and a challenge for Blindfolded. So I've considered that as my next one after Kingdom Hearts. If I continue doing more Blindfolded after that, I could pick up
Makes sense.
another hobby after Kingdom Hearts. I hobby jump all the time, so I don't want to make
Mhm.
any promises.
If other people want to get started speedrunning, where do they go? How do they get started? Is there like a place people can go and be like, hey, here's all the cool speedrun tips?
The number one site for speedruns is speedrun.com, and it has thousands of games with all the top runners for those games, as well as a lot of those bigger communities will have guides and notes and different categories that you can just dip your feet into. There are some exceptions, like Mega Man Community has their own website. I don't know the backstory behind that. I just know they don't have a speedrun leaderboards on speedrun.com. They just kept to their own community, but most communities are on speedrun.com. And for blindfolded runs, if people want to be crazy and do that, there's blindfoldedgaming.com, where you can find full game runs, segmented runs, individual level runs of over 200 games and over 300 speedrunners who have done something blindfolded in gaming.
Mhm.
And my advice for speedruns is, while you don't need to start on something small, I would recommend something that's less than an hour or less than an hour and a half, just shorter runs so you can get a feel for it and practice. Pick a game
Mhm.
that you won't mind replaying through over and over, and possibly a game you do enjoy or know decently well, but you can pick anything really I want. Zelda 1, I had picked up, and I had just beaten that game like twice, and I am a Zelda fan, but I didn't have the memories of it as, say, Ocarina of Time, but I don't speedrun Ocarina of Time because I have more fun playing that casually than speedrunning. Kingdom Hearts 2 is my favorite Kingdom Hearts game, but I had more fun with Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories Reverse Rebirth for speedruns, and so it doesn't have to be like your all-time favorite game, just something that you feel more fun replaying over and over at a speed instead of casually, I guess.
Makes sense. With that, that brings us probably about to the end of our show. Um, so if people want to see more from you, where can they find you?
The two best spots would be twitch.tv/Blazeingphoenix or youtube.com/Blazeingphoenix. Twitch, I just stream on, but I focus more on the YouTube side of things, as it's easier for me to take what I do on
Mhm.
YouTube and turn it into videos and post my videos, whether it's uh, the speed run itself, miscellaneous videos I sometimes do here and there, or shorts just to try to get extra views because shorts are popular. And
They are indeed.
I typically do speed runs, and like we've been saying lately, blindfolded speed runs, but sometimes I casually play games. Recently, I played through Final Fantasy 1 Pixel Remastered, 100%ed it. I've been also playing Oracle of Seasons, but not as much, but I will be playing it from time to time. I was going to play that more, but then I've been greatly enjoying getting back into getting better at Kingdom Hearts speedrun that I've been
Mhm.
blindfolded speedruns that I've been focused more on it, taking each world that I do and my fastest time and turning those into videos. I eventually want to take shorts and do little tutorials of blindfolded Kingdom Hearts, as what we talked about today, of the left D-pad, right D-pad, or footsteps, dodge rolling, sword swinging for movement, or why I don't do Halloween Town, just little
Mhm.
tutorials of Kingdom Hearts blindfolded. And mostly I've been doing shorts of other games I've done blindfolded, just to try to get more awareness of, it's not
Mhm.
just Mario 64 that people are doing blindfolded. It's not just Punch Out that people are doing blindfolded. You could just pick a fighting game like Tekken 3. You can take an arcade game like Donkey Kong NES. You can take more modern games like Kingdom Hearts, or not Kingdom Hearts, more like Celeste, an indie 2D
Mhm.
platformer that people see as hard. And just, if you can figure it out, with audio cues of consistency, almost any game can be done blindfolded. Even games that people thought for the longest time wasn't possible. Like Punch Out has a great story that Summoning Salt has on. They thought Mike Tyson would be impossible until one guy did it, and now multiple people have done the entire game blindfolded.
All right. And as always, listener, thank you so much for listening, especially if you made it to the end with my voice being like this. If you want to support the show, we have a Patreon now. Hooray! So you can go to our link tree and find the link to that and help support the show, help support the hosting costs, and help me hopefully buy some more cough syrup. And if you don't want to do that, share it with your friends. I don't spend $1 to advertise the show. I don't have the money to do that. So word of mouth is all I got. So yeah, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog. But with that, thank you again so much for listening and have a great rest of your day. Bye.